All right, Mahmoud, can you hear me? Okay, unmute yourself really quick up at the top.
Okay.
So I'll turn the
Yeah.
stream on, but I was going to give just a quick hey to you guys. Okay, I think everything's working here. So let me click start and then we'll get rolling. All right. Cool. Well, thank you guys for coming to Laravel DFW. Axxess is always gracious. So just a couple of things really quick as we start out everything this week. So as always, I'm Tanner Hearn. So if you have any questions, hit me up. We have a lot of cool stuff that we do during the month. We have Slack and some other stuff that I'll mention, but you can always either hit me up on Twitter or just find me at one of these meetups, and we're excited to talk. Also, let's give a round of applause for Axxess for the food, the drinks, and providing the location that we have. We're very happy for that. So thank you, Axxess. Also, if you're not a part of the Slack channel, I say it every month, but it really is super beneficial and nice to be able to talk with people every day. If you have a question or you need help in any way, you can just reach out via Slack. Nathan and I talk quite a bit. Dave and I message back some. And then normally there's at least one conversation in the general channel where somebody's needing help every day. So we're always happy to help in that way. So also follow us on Twitter, Laravel DFW. And today we're really excited to have a talk on Docker. Mahmoud, thank you for joining us.
Yeah. Thanks for you.
Yeah, definitely. So let me move you over so we can see you here live, and then we will get started. And I need to hide chat somehow. This is great. Okay, and there we go. Cool. All right. You ready to go, Mahmoud? Please introduce yourself.
All right. Hi. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, that's great. So yeah, as mentioned, my name is Mahmoud Zalt. I'm a web developer. I do a lot of back-end coding, mainly using Laravel and also with Docker. And I will be today giving you the talk about Docker. So hopefully this introduction get you started just after this presentation. Um, I'd like to thank Nathan for inviting me to give this presentation. And
Yeah.
also, yeah, thanks for you. And also, I'd like to thank the contributors for LaraDock, because as you know, I'm the creator of LaraDock, which is the tool that mostly I will be covering today and giving you a demo to show you how you can get started with Docker very quickly. Um, so I'm gonna share my screen now.
Very cool. We can see it.
Okay, great, great. So basically, first let me just make it clear that English is not my first language, not even the second one. So if you don't understand anything, just let me know so I can make it clear, okay? And also, I'm not a DevOps engineer or any system admin or IT, so I just created LaraDock to make these things easier for me. So I'm just a developer like most of you, and I'm not an IT guy, okay? And uh, I know that there are some questions going on that you need me to clarify, and I gathered about 7 questions that I like to answer today. So the first question was, how does Docker LaraDock compare to Vagrant Homestead? And basically, the comparison should be between Docker and Vagrant. The main question is, what's the difference between Docker and Vagrant? So starting by Vagrant, since LaraDock and Homestead are just tools for these big softwares, Vagrant is a virtual machine manager, which manages virtual machines like VMware and VirtualBox and any other providers. Some people think of it like a VM, but it's not. And So now the comparison is between Docker and virtual machines, and in particular is the Linux containers, the LXC, which is the core technology behind the Docker platform, which contains a lot of softwares. So now, since I make it clear what's the difference between the Linux containers and the virtual machines, I could say that virtual machines are tool that virtualize the operating system, the hardware that it runs on top of it. So you can now run 5, 6, 10, no matter how many number of operating systems using the same hardware, which is great. But Linux containers on the other side works on virtualizing the application on the operating system. So you can now run 10, 20, 30 applications on the same operating system, sharing the kernel and just virtualizing the container. You can think of the container as the part that is responsible for running an application on the operating system. This is the only part that gets virtualized, and then it shares the kernel. That's how you can run multiple softwares at the same time. So now what is the difference between Homestead and LaraDock? Well, Homestead is a box for Vagrant, which lets you, or give you that development environment where you can just drop and start development. LaraDock is just the same, but since it's different technology, so LaraDock is a bunch of containers pre-configured to run with Laravel and lately with any PHP applications. I hope I make this clear. I'm gonna go and move to the next presentation. How it works probably refer to how Docker works. So it's very weird to keep seeing the presentation. So how Docker work is, there are many ways. One way is that you can go to Docker, sorry, have the Docker, and then find containers, and then use these containers. So if I go, to the Explore, and lately they have this Docker store where you can shop for containers. So whatever container come to your mind, you can get it. Let's say, what they have here, let's say databases, it's a Neo4j. So you can clone these images by running these commands, and you just get yourself a software. This is one way to deal with it. The second way would be to write a Docker file, and this Docker file actually get one of the images, modify it the way you want, and then allow you to run whatever code you need and put your application on top of it and start. So these are the two ways that works. Also, there's another way, but not so much preferable, is where you actually pull or clone a container and then SSH into it, and then install whatever software you need. Let's say I want to install Neo4j. You'll be installing it normally on that image, and then like think of it like zipping that image and throwing it back to the repository so it make it reusable. But this is not so good because it doesn't give you like the blueprint of what's going on inside that image. It's very different than having a Docker file that describes every software on the image and every configuration.
Hey, Mahmoud, we're unable to see your browser or your presentation right now. Just letting you know.
Oh, okay. What about now?
Yes, thanks.
All right, that's good. So, so this is how it works. We're gonna see it very soon. Let's move to the third question, which is, can Docker be integrated into my current local setup? Well, yes, it can be. I'm assuming that this question is someone who's using currently Vagrant, and you want to know if I can run Docker at the same time. Well, yes, you can run both applications as long as the ports are not in use. So one example is, let's say you have that MySQL installed on your machine and is using the localhost port 3306. If you're gonna expose the same ports through Docker, there's gonna be some conflict. So you should turn off your software and then run Docker in that case. But then you can always turn off Docker. So if you are on a Mac also, or on a Windows, you can just quit Docker and then go back to your normal life if you don't like it. That's that simple. Next question is how to get started with Docker. Well, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna go to Docker. And actually, first of all, you need to install Docker. I'm not gonna show you how you can install it, it's very simple. But back to that hub, you can go to hub, let's say, as I mentioned, you're gonna have to find whatever software you need. Let's say you need Ubuntu, you can get Ubuntu. That's simple. You need Nginx, you need Redis, Mongo. Let's use MySQL because most people are familiar with it. And so yeah, let me start. I'm gonna create a folder here. I call it Docker like this. Oh, sorry. Oh, this works. And first of all, when you have Docker, if you just type Docker, this will tell you that Docker is working just fine. And if you want to see if you have any Docker container currently running, but when I say Docker container, I mean software, like let's say MySQL or anything else, you just type Docker PS. And if you see nothing, that means that no softwares currently are running. So let's say I want to install MySQL through inside a Docker container. What I will be doing is the following command. So I would type docker run. Actually, let's get this, all of it, and put it. Oh, no, 1 second. I don't want enter. So let's download the latest version. So Docker run will run any image you want. The name, you can give it any name you want. You can name it Laravel, MySQL, whatever. And then this E are the environments. So whatever you put here goes directly inside the container that helps you access some softwares. One of the examples would be, let me see, environment variables. Let's say I want MySQL database to be called test. Let's set the user. And the user, I'm gonna call it user. And the password, I think I'm gonna call it password. I hope this is correct. Let's try it. And when you see this result, that means it's working. So now, if I go with Docker PS, I should see that I have an image running MySQL inside of it, and when it started and all the details. So now I need to go inside that container. To go inside it, you can run docker execute, and then put the container ID, type bash. Just have to do this. By the way, everything I do is almost applied to every other image and every container. So just if you get it with this one, you can do it with anyone else. So now if I list, you can see I'm inside that container. So now to make sure that MySQL is installed and is working, I should go, I believe the username was user and the password was password. Yeah, so I'm there. I say, anyway, we are now just in MySQL. This is to prove like how simple and how fast it was to just install MySQL and configure it. The same way can be applied to every software. You can, that simple, install anything you need. So now if I want to say like show databases, you can see it. You can say I want to use test. Let's say show tables. It's empty, but of course you're not going to be working with it like this. So you can be installing some, you can be using tools like SQL Pro or MySQL Workbench or PHPMyAdmin, anything you like. To access it, it's on the local host, so you can go 127.0.0.1, the user, password, and that was test. And since I didn't change the port, it will be the default. But if I want to change the port, I can just go back to that and add -p and then put 3306 to 3306. Or if you want to change it, you can easily change it. Let's try to connect. It's not connected. Cool. So 170.0.1. 1 second.
That's how it always works. Live coding.
Yeah. What I did wrong, let's check. Test user password.
What did you say, Nathan? Um, was it user or was that just the command? Maybe -u is for.
One second. Anyway, so I don't want to waste this time here, but it was working. You will just see your MySQL tables, and that's it. I don't want to waste a lot of time here. So first
Can I ask
exit.
one question, Mahmoud?
Yeah, sure.
So you're saying that while Docker is running, it's going to overtake the default ports. So that's why.
Oh yes.
Will work because while you're running Docker, then it's just going to run. So
yes.
That seems super easy.
Docker stop. So now you can see how I can stop the container, and if I want to remove it, I can also remove it. And now I can go back to that. Actually, let me just clear my screen first. And go back there and say, it's taking a long time. With my sport 3306. So. Actually, I don't use this manually. I'm going to show you later how I can use it with Docker Compose. Anyway, let's try it again. Also 127.1 user password and test. Let's hope it works. No. Anyway, let's move on. So if you want to stop this container, you can simply go Docker stop and then set the container ID as I did before. Also, you can say remove with -f, so it's stop and remove at the same time. Remove. Second. And now I see nothing is running. And if I do ps -a, I see all the containers. Oh, there's a lot here. I should have cleaned it. But anyway, there's a lot of containers that currently I use for development. And whenever I move to any project I want, I can just go there and say, start. Okay. So that was it if you want to use it manually, but you have to go back there and then go and shop for, let's say, PHP, get yourself a Ubuntu version, and whatever software you want, and then you will be configuring them to work with each other through the mapping the ports between them and sometimes sharing some volumes. So I don't want to complicate things. I will move to the presentation. I promise it's going to get easier very soon. So how to check a container is running, you obviously see it with the docker ps command. And how to change the PHP version, okay, inside the container. So here, let me actually show you LaraDock and give you a little bit introduction on what LaraDock is and how it facilitates all that thing. So LaraDock, as you can see, is a lot of containers all together, configured to work by default with Laravel, and with a small configuration you can make it work with any PHP application. Many people are using it also with Symfony, WordPress, Drupal, and I forget, there's some other projects also. And if you want to get started, you just go to the start section. So let's set up the environment. All you have to do is clone the repository. So I'm gonna go git clone. I always, by the way, I never mentioned this, but I always rename it to something different than LaraDock, so that later when I say start, actually let me run it and then explain why. LaraDock, and then I'm gonna say presentation. So now, if I say Docker compose up -d just to say I want this to run in the background. Now I can say nginx mysql PHP FPM and the workspace container. So you don't have to specify them, but let's do it. And also, all the supported softwares here, you can also run them. There must be some, yeah, all these softwares that we currently support. But if you want to support yours, it's very simple and very easy. So let's try this command, and hopefully everything will work now. See why I rename it? Oh, it takes by default the folder name and then put underscore, and then it renames the container. So this is much better when I want to say docker ps -a to know to which project this belongs. So there's no conflict between them. Now, if I run docker ps, I should see my running container. But since I'm using Docker Compose, which I didn't talk about yet, you can say Docker Compose ps. It's just a better way to organize these containers by projects. So now it tells me this is the container, and this is what's running, and this is the ports and everything. And to talk a little bit about Docker Compose and why I think it's an amazing tool. Well, I started Docker before the existing of this tool, very long time. And what I have to do is, as you saw before with the MySQL command, this one, I had to run a lot of these commands. Like for every software, I'll have to run, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 of these commands just to configure everything. I forget what's the key that remove all that. So with Docker Compose, let me show you what's going on. Actually, let's open it with PHP Storm, better than Sublime for me. And Docker Compose is just a YAML file where you can define all these commands inside one file, and then with a single command, like you saw, Docker Compose up, you can run whichever containers you want. And all the configuration will be inside your Docker Compose file. See, so if I go to the MySQL right now, you can see the exact environment that I was trying to do, the ports, the volume, and we'll talk about this very soon. So the same applied everywhere for every database that we support. Anyway, yeah, so let's try to execute inside MySQL here. So here I can say Docker Compose, and then just set the container name, which is MySQL. Oh, sorry, MySQL, and then side bash. So then I have to put the container ID, and now again I'm inside that container. And now depend on whatever environment variables I have for MySQL here, I should be using to connect to it. I think I have it by default as LaraDock. And now I can connect to it. So once I start some application, I will show you. Actually, let's test it. Or let's not waste time on this. I want to cover how to change the PHP version. So I'm gonna telling you how to change it inside LaraDock. So let's say you want to go to the PHP, you want to change the PHP version of the PHP FPM, because the PHP CLI in LaraDock is inside the workspace container, and the PHP FPM is in its own container. So let's log into that container. PHP FPM. Oh, I always forget this. Now if I type PHP minus version, I believe there's an error there, but anyway, the version is 7.0.9. Oh, sorry, okay, let's exit this container and show you how you can change the version. You can go to we made it very simple with LaraDock. So if you go to PHP FPM, oh, there's a lot of containers, nothing to it. Where's that? Yeah, this is the one. Actually, let's go to the documentation. PHP version. I can't find anything today. FPM version 7.0 to 5.6. you have to search for this inside the file. Yeah, that's it. So 7.0, that was the latest way we did it. And this is actually just another Docker file. So if you go to the PHP FPM, only in this container, you will see two Docker files, one for 7.0, one for 5.6. So if I type 5.6 here, and let's go to Docker compose stop all these containers. And then what I didn't mention is also, actually, let's remove them as well. And then what I didn't mention is this Docker file. In order to become an image, you need to run the command that says build. So you can go Docker build and point to your Docker file. But since we're using Docker compose, you can say Docker compose build and specify the container name, which is PHP FPM. I hope it doesn't take a lot of time to download now. And because I never run the PHP 5.6, it's going to download now. So what it's doing now, it's downloading from the hub that we just saw before. Where is that? So it's downloading the PHP FPM. Right? Oh, I thought it's done. Yeah, okay. Second. So now I can say Docker compose minus D nginx MySQL. I don't need MySQL. Let's just run it. Nginx will also run the PHP FPM and the workspace because there's links between them inside the Docker compose file. And in that case, it will run them every time you run one of them. So now let's execute inside the PHP FPM container again. And hopefully this will work now, PHP minus version, and now it's 5.6.24. So that's simple. You can also multiple versions of the same software, which is a cool feature that is not available inside with Vagrant. So with Vagrant, you will have to run a complete different operating system just to have different versions. So imagine switching between two projects that we're working on. One of them is very old, and one is very new. So that will consume a lot of resources. I really forget what I need to talk about later. So let's back to the presentation. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Yeah, so how do I handle multiple projects using LaraDock? Well, the word multiple, I mean, this is very important question, but Docker is made for separating everything on its own world. Like every application by itself has to be running on its own container. Every application will be hosted on its own planet, if you want to call it. So when you say I want to host multiple projects on LaraDock, I know how very useful is this, because on development, you definitely don't want to do this on production. So, but on development, I can understand just switching between two projects is going to be, I mean, you have to go there, say Docker compose, I mean, let's just PS. You have to stop, sometimes remove. So let's stop them. Oh, sorry. Stop, and then go to the new directory, and then type start on the other project. But if you don't want to keep doing this, we lately added support for this. However, we're still doing it, working on it, I mean. Let's back to the documentation and show you how you can run multiple projects, but on development. So where's the install? Let's search for multiple. That's an easy way. So I'm gonna down, by the way, does also stop and remove. So I'm gonna remove everything from here, clear, and clone a new version. new copy. Okay, so I'm gonna go clone this one into LaraDock, call it multi. This hello one. This is all you have to do. You're just pointing to the project inside the container, and right there I'm pointing this, which is this directory, to the container, to this directory. Okay, and let's copy this one, call this one 2, and go ahead and say 2, 2. See, I mean, it looks good. I hope it works. All right. And now all we have to do is make sure we are inside the LaraDock directory and run docker compose up -d and select your softwares. I'm using also MySQL, but also Redis with this project. So let's run it. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the steps to make sure I'm not forgetting anything. So after we, yeah, so I was mentioning again that before we do the Nginx configuration, you can actually access the project this way, but of course it's not so helpful, and you need to configure Nginx in order to access it as a domain name. And for that reason, yes, we need to edit the hosts. It's just like this. I was testing this before, and second, so I call this hello.dev. So let's say hello 1 and hello 2. And now let's run docker compose up. Oh, all we have, oh, we already run it. So now let's just go to that domain and test if it's gonna work. At least it's running. Yeah, this domain is not available. Let me try something real quick. API. But if it's not gonna work, it's all right. I don't want to spend too much time here. Anyway, for some reason also doesn't work on live coding. I'm gonna accept that and move forward. Next question. I think the time, yeah. So all these questions I'll be covering so far, and if you have more questions, you can always go to the Gitter and join us. There are about chatting there, less than 100. And you can ask your question, and hopefully people from the community will be answering you. Now I would like to answer your questions. Thank you for listening.
All right, let's give him a round of applause if we can. All right, so does anybody have questions for Mahmoud? All right, Nathan, definitely.
All right, good to finally talk to you.
Yeah, good to talk to you too.
The one of the reasons I got so excited about bringing you on board and showing everybody LaraDock was just Docker in general and how excited I am about, I don't know, where things are going with that community. I see Amazon Web Services doing a lot with Docker, and as well as Azure, major cloud hosting providers doing a lot with Docker. And I really think that name is going to be, the name Docker is going to be, you'll hear it in your ears, you become more and more prevalent in our community as things move forward. And I think it'll eventually outpace. My question to you, I guess, my first question is that have you ever deployed in any of your projects, Docker in a production environment, like where, like Amazon Web Services says, like, hey, we work with Docker containers, like, with virtual instances, things like that. Have you ever done production environment Docker?
Yeah. Actually, I did one for my own project, which was very, very small, that I didn't have to make this cloud infrastructure. All I have to do is install Docker on the server and run my containers. But I used to work with a company where I get introduced to Docker. And in that company, we used to host huge applications on Docker. But unfortunately, it wasn't my job. However, we used to I know that last thing we do is we moved to Amazon. And it was very hard and very tough, as the IT guy used to always tell me. But I've checked it lately. There's something on the Amazon Web Service that's getting this process easy. However, you have to write like same like Docker Compose, but there's another file that you have to run to say where every container should be located, because the hard part was managing all these containers and connecting them together. It wasn't that simple, as I remember, but personally I didn't do it so far. That's why I mainly use it for development, and LaraDock, as you can see, is mostly configured for development. But hopefully very, very soon we're going to be using it on production with the help of some people or the contributors who hopefully share their experience with that.
Sure. Yeah, no, I see that. I see it going that way, to where in the future, you know, if you want to spin up servers and Amazon Web Services, you know, you can do it manually by logging in, but perhaps maybe you just give them like a modified Docker file that shows them, hey, these size instances running on this with this type of environment, all running off a configurable file that you can version and then change on the fly.
Yeah, Docker also working on some tools. I really forget the name of those tools, but they can actually just specify if you want DigitalOcean or Amazon or any other provider, and where you can, they will manage that for you. They will manage all the infrastructure, make sure everything is connected, and
Awesome.
so I think it's getting bigger and better and easier.
Sure. Does anybody else have any questions about Docker, LaraDock, or anything like that? Now, how many of you guys use Vagrant right now? A lot of Vagrant users. Any Docker users right now? We got 2 Docker users. Like I said,
Cool.
give it about a year and a half, 2 years, and you'll probably see that. You'll probably see that switched around. It's just one of those things. You know, there's a little bit of a learning curve to me with the command line, just like anything else. But you know, I think in the end, it's going to be ultimately something that takes over, and it's going to be very valuable for the entire community. Make everything eventually easier for everybody, especially with guys. I mean, you have stuff like LaraDock, where it's, you know, specifically pulling Laravel and getting that application up and running as fast as possible. So,
yeah, definitely. As you mentioned, yes, I just want to say that, yeah, the learning curve of Docker is much harder than Vagrant. Vagrant can just run it very simply. But the reason why I built LaraDock is to simplify that part, because I found myself running a lot of commands and dealing with all this stuff. So I decided, why not just putting them online? So now, really, as you can see, it's just 2 commands. You can just clone and Docker Compose up, and that's it. If you are a Laravel developer and you want to follow up and get all the features of Docker, because it provides a lot of features other than just less resource consumption and faster to boot. There's a lot of features where you can run. You can easily switch between softwares. You can run multiple PHP at the same time. You can run like five PHP 7.0 at the same time, or 7.1, whatever. Or you can run multiple MySQL different versions and switch between them while the application is running. You can just switch between them. But it's not possible with Vagrant. Also, Vagrant doesn't compare to it since it doesn't go to production. However, I know it's still a little bit complex to go to production, but things are getting easier. I just don't have the time. I mainly do coding more than IT management. I just want my development environment on my laptop to be super fast, and I don't have to install PHP, Ruby, whatever languages, and the databases and the different versions. Because imagine you have 2 projects on 2 different PHP versions where you are using LAMP or MAMP or WAMP or whatever. That would be so hard to stop one and start the other one. And I mean, yeah, there's a lot of features. One of them I need also to mention is the easiness of configuration. So it doesn't, if you make any mistake at any point in Docker container, you can easily shut it down and restart it, where it doesn't affect any other application. So if you mess with PHP, let's say, where your data container is still safe, your MySQL is still running, still responding, let's say. If you mess with the application code itself, the Redis is still working, or while in a Vagrant or in a native, I mean, installing all the software native, if you mess with one, you're gonna have to fix all the others manually. So there's a lot of great features. So put some time, learn it a little bit, or start with LaraDock first, and then you will be learning it with the time.
Yeah, I'll say it's really important just that our local environments continue to get more effective at mimicking what we're going to see in the production environment. So all of this work that's being done to create easier and more expansive local environments can only do good for everyone, because then we're testing it locally with the same constraints that we'll see in production. And so I'm excited to see where Docker goes, because there's a lot of room for growth in the area. I mean, with what Vagrant's doing, with what Homestead is doing, with what Docker's doing, Docker seems like it's very flexible. So I'm excited to see things always get easier. They always get easier and more. There's always more ways to simulate environments, and so all that that's going to do is produce better quality code, because we can anticipate problems ahead of time, and it will create better quality apps. So all of that is really helpful in that way. And I speak as someone who doesn't know that much about Docker, but just seeing what you've done, Mahmoud, today, and the things, how many resources that Docker offers, they're just huge. It's a ton. It's a huge library. So does anybody have any other question? Oh, back in the back. Sure.
Hi, Mahmoud.
Hi.
My name is Paul. So I've been using LaraDock for probably, I'm guessing, 4 months, 6 months, I'm not sure. So I've got 3 questions, but I've had 2 beers. So by the time I get to question 2, I might have forgotten the third one. So I'm just going to kind of try. Okay, so question 1 is, so with Homestead, you would set up, you kind of have one Homestead on your development machine. And then you can have a bunch of projects there, right? So you can have like 3 or 4 projects running there, and you can switch between them. With LaraDock, it's more kind of like one LaraDock sort of setup per project, right? You put it inside of the source. Well, okay, so let me just tell you what we're doing, and then you just tell me if I'm doing it wrong. So, so we've actually cloned LaraDock as a submodule, so Git submodule. The idea there is that between us developers, we can kind of share that, and we can lock onto a particular version. And then, but because it's a submodule, we don't want to mess with that. We don't want to kind of change any of the Docker Compose settings that you put in and stuff like that. So what we've actually done is like, so in our project, there's a folder called Docker, and then inside of that, we've cloned LaraDock. Then your Docker Compose file then points to the various folders where it finds the Docker files. So what we've done is we've kind of like copy pasted that Docker Compose file into the root of our project. And then obviously what we had to do then is then change the path so that it can find the Docker files. So far so good, right? Like, so what we've done is like copy pasted, and now we don't have to modify any of the stuff that's sitting inside the submodule.
Yeah.
That allows us then to change the Docker Compose file and add bits and pieces into it. So for example, we've added like a Selenium hub and Selenium, Firefox, and Chrome, so we can do some testing there. So that's question 1. What do you think of that?
Well, you can, yeah, it works, obviously. You can have one Docker Compose and then point to those, but you can also make an easier thing, is that you can build your image and put it on production, on the Docker Hub, and then pull your image instead of having it locally. So you can have it globally and then pulling it, and whenever you make a change, you can make a change and tag that change so it affects your project. And the tag doesn't have to be numbers, so you can even tag it with your project name. And this way, you will have multiple images all online, and then whenever you type Docker Compose up, it will pull those images instead of pulling locally. But now you can see lately, just in the last week, I guess, we have made documentation for the support of multiple softwares. So you can see now you don't have to point to the Docker files. Instead, you can point to the projects from one LaraDock. Yeah, so you can have central Docker Compose file and then point to them. And I guess also you can use the feature of the .env file where you can override the environment. So if in one project the database name is different than the other project, you can override it inside your environment variable of your project. But also when you use it, please share with us your experience and contribute. We'd love to implement this because, yeah.
Okay, so all right, so far it's been working for us because we've got it as a submodule, so we can commit the particular commit number that the submodule is at, and therefore everyone in our team is working on the same version. So that's so far that's what like I'll more. The other question is you have one container called Workspace, and I've never really I use it every day. I go into the Workspace container so that I can run tests and stuff like that and run artisan commands. But I've never really understood exactly what the Workspace container is, because you also have a PHP FPM container and obviously Nginx and all the other stuff. So I'm kind of curious where the Workspace container comes in and what it's actually doing. Like, what have you done in there? Because it works, it does what we want it to, but I just don't understand what it actually does.
It's so the Workspace is just a replacement for your machine. So let's say you don't even want to install Git on your machine. You don't even want to install Node. You don't want to install PHP FPM or Composer or anything. You just need everything virtualized. So this Workspace is the container that is probably on Linux, is a light version of Linux, where you can SSH into it or enter it, and then run all your commands and install all your extra softwares that goes per project. This is you were using it, right? So you are running your tests from there. You were running artisan commands, because the artisan commands require PHP CLI and not PHP FPM. That's why you see FPM is in its own container. Just because, let's say you went to production, you don't have to bring the CLI with you. You just, or probably you can, but you don't. You can maybe create a lighter version of the Workspace container. LaraDock currently doesn't support production so much. Until lately, we're trying to support it. However, if you want to support, the future, how it should be is you just run Docker Compose up. You don't define any software. You don't have to define them manually, and it should just hold the projects that you need on that production.
Right. So that's actually. So sorry, I'm sure you.
It's more like a development environment. The Workspace is just development. Before Workspace, I used to run few commands from my laptop, because who doesn't have Git or Composer installed locally? But some people keep requiring to have a container where they go. We can have multiple containers, but you will, let's say what I show right now is MySQL. If I have to exit the current container, go into MySQL to run MySQL command. Imagine you're doing this to run Composer command, PHP unit command. Imagine I have 20 containers, which would be ultimate solution for Docker, because this is what they always trying to do, separate everything. But this Workspace container is not adhering a lot to the Docker rules, if you want, but it's just a Workspace container. Like, you go to it, you do your development stuff, but you don't take it with you on production.
Okay, and to your point about just saying Docker Compose up, so earlier when I said that for us, LaraDock is a Git submodule, and then what I've done is copy pasted the Docker Compose file out of it into the root of my project. What that means is that we own the Docker Compose file, and so I've kind of pruned it so that we've removed, for example, we use Postgres, not MySQL, and we use Nginx, not Apache. And so I've actually pruned that. So now I actually do just run Docker Compose up. So I don't
Great.
the container names.
Yeah, this is the right way to use it. But if you want to support multiple users, everyone has its own stuff, we had to go with it this way. Yeah.
Right. Okay, that's all I've got. Thanks. That was fun.
Thank you very much. Another question? Any other questions? I got a question. Is that you have an ocean view out there? Is that what you got?
Oh yeah, I'm in Miami.
Yeah,
it's a great ocean.
Miami. Look at that. Nice.
Yeah, but man, the traffic is so bad. It took me 1.5 hours to come to the home today.
Hey, but that's what Docker does for you, right? You get a Miami Beach view. So So who here would consider Docker based on some of the flexibility? Anybody new? Yeah, it seems really interesting. There's probably like half of the people here um, that raise their hand. I think it's definitely something worth trying. There does seem to be a lot in the command line, but like you said, there's documentation for that. And I think once you get the hang of it, I mean, you probably only had maybe 5 to 10 different commands that you had to even memorize. The rest of it was just the names of the actual things, whether it's MySQL or Nginx or whatever. So I think it's probably has a very shallow learning curve. So I'm excited to look into the documentation more. Okay, so last call for any questions. Dave, you're back here. You missed the presentation, but you can still ask a question. So the question was, how many people have followed LaraDock? So it looks like a couple, maybe like 4 or 5.
I was just curious. I'm good. So, I basically asked how many people have docs before coming to the meetup. I know I actively follow the uh, the repo and stuff. So there's a learning curve. If you follow, you can see a lot of the common questions that are asked about trying to connect to things like MySQL on different ports. Once you get through that, you said there's a few commands, like 5 or 6. There's only a couple of commands. What you saw him typing was actually the names of the containers you want to file up, like MariaDB or Postgres or a Redis server or whatever. So you just append those on Docker up, and then you give it the names. But if you follow LaraDocs, you'll see a lot of the common questions that come up. And so you'll learn a lot about Docker, the way some of the things work by some of the questions outside of just LaraDocs, right? It's kind of generic to Docker in general. And then one thing that he didn't talk about and he didn't show was one thing that we do a lot is debugging. And the advantage to LaraDocs over like Homestead is constantly running with your debugger turned on, Xdebug, which draws a lot of system resources, especially if you're doing Composer install on a pretty big project. With LaraDocs, you can run you can run your debugger just when you need it. So just-in-time configuration type through PHP Storm or something. So you really save a lot of system resources. So
Very cool. Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, I'm gonna definitely give it a try. And for any of those that found it interesting, I'm sure you could hit up Mahmoud on Twitter or anything and ask any questions about getting started. You can also join the Slack channel too. Mahmoud, where can we find out more about your work? Tell us a few URLs or on Twitter. Where do you like people to look for you?
Yeah, basically
It's
Twitter.
9 o'clock.
Sorry. Yeah, basically on Twitter. And if you want more about me, you can go to my website. It's zalt.me, which is zalt.me. That's it. You can read a lot about me. Yeah, Twitter mainly. I post a lot of things. I keep the people updated about what's going on, changes, and cool features of LaraDock and Docker.
Very cool. Well, thank you again for coming. Let's give him one more round of applause.
Thank you.
So we will conclude this presentation. So thank you all for coming out. We'll stay around for a little bit and have some conversation. We can talk about projects, or if you have any bugs or questions for any of us, feel free to ask.
Yeah, sorry, just one more thing in case I forget to mention it at the beginning. I just want to also thank all the contributors and also admins that lately have been supporting me on this project. So really, they are doing a lot of things and answering a lot of questions. It's not all about me. I just started this project. And, anyone is welcome to also become an admin and contributor and do a lot of contribution to this tool. Thank you for having me also. Thank you.
Yeah, open source is super helpful because we have so many people working on it. So definitely thank you to everybody working on LaraDock and on that. So with that said, we'll just kind of keep talking here. And Mahmoud, thank you again.
Thanks. Thank you.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.